The Ben Simmons debacle has dominated NBA media for a long time now, and it has an exhausting amount of twists and turns. While at points it was one of the most interesting stories in basketball, it quickly became one of the most frustrating stories in all of sports, as what seemed like a foregone conclusion just kept going on and on and on and got more and more convoluted. But recently there has been yet another twist, and that is that Ben Simmons and his agent Rich Paul are claiming mental health struggles and using it as the reason that Ben cannot play for the Sixers right now. Following this story was a shitstorm of awful discourse. And that, in part, is what this video is about. It's only in part because Ben Simmons and the story surrounding his mental state is just the latest and greatest example of sports fans, sports media, and the teams themselves mishandling a delicate conversation. And as the destigmatization of mental health struggles continues in society, it makes the fumbling of this situation feel that much worse. Welcome to NBA Deep Dive. The crux of this discussion has essentially been whether or not Ben Simmons is faking his mental health issues. The main reason people think this is originally Ben and his agent claimed that they'd be willing to forego a season's worth of salary in order to not play for the team and for him to get traded. But then Morey and the Sixers called Ben's bluff and they didn't actually move him, and when his wallet actually started to take a hit and subsequently Rich Paul's as well, suddenly Ben shows up at the Sixers practice facility out of the blue. He then appears in footage at these practices to be completely disengaged, not caring, and leaving the facility after the huddle as soon as possible, just not embracing his teammates whatsoever. Then later comes the report that Ben has told Sixers management that he is, quote, not mentally ready to play. The result of this is the Sixers still not playing Ben Simmons, but because he's not showing up to practice and has a valid excuse now, he isn't being fined to the extent that he was. Now, he did get fined for not taking Sixers specialists specifically, which we'll talk about more later. But the point is, showing up and then claiming mental health issues is a lot better for Ben's wallet than just continuing to not show up. So the natural conclusion for this for many was, well, Ben is faking his mental health issues for his paycheck. And this is where the problem lies. This specific allegation has so many layers of problems, and the way in which it is thrown out there with callous disregard is the biggest problem amongst them. I'm sure a lot of people are going to see this video in the recommended and immediately scoff because apparently having empathy just isn't cool now, and that would be virtue signaling. But for those of you who are open to a conversation, let's have it. The problem with the notion that Ben is faking his issues for his money isn't necessarily because it isn't true, because for all any of us know, he could indeed be faking. The true knowledge of what's going on in someone's head is between them and themselves. Even if someone is a complete open book, they still are not really sharing every detail of their mental state because that's pretty much impossible. If Ben is lying, the only one who really knows is him and maybe Rich Paul, and if he isn't lying, again, the only one who really knows is Ben. Now, I will say from a human level, I don't know how you can go through what Ben Simmons has in the last couple of months and not struggle mentally. First of all, you can have damn near perfect circumstances surrounding you and still have mental health struggles. I would know because that pretty much sums up my case. But second, being the main target after losing a Game 7 to a team your team was expected to beat across the board, knowing you could have done better, and then having your teammates and coach not necessarily throw you under the bus, but also not really have your back either, then you ask for a trade and immediately become public enemy number one in what is considered one of the most toxic sports cities in America. You're telling me that you would go through all of that and have no struggles, no biggie, just brush it off. I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it because that would sure as shit break me. But this is not about whether or not Ben Simmons has mental health struggles. The problem is that it is something that we are debating to begin with. That we feel comfortable casually speculating on someone's mental state to begin with. The reason we feel okay doing this is the dehumanization that athletes experience and really everyone experiences in a capitalist society where workers are treated as commodities who are only allowed to have humanity if it's a net good or at the very least neutral for the company because your mental health break does not satisfy our shareholders. But hey, that's a topic for people smarter than me to cover, I guess. But the reason why people feel okay speculating on Ben's mental health is that they are not looking at Ben as a human being, they are looking at Ben as an asset. Ben Simmons isn't a complex, thinking, breathing person like the rest of us with thoughts and feelings. No, he's that guy who plays for the Sixers. He's not someone we know, he's a member of a team that has a price tag on him that can be traded for some other asset with a price tag on them. And yet, when we have this deeply impersonal knowledge of Ben Simmons because we do not know him, we still feel valid in speculating on something that is deeply personal? To put it simply, this is not a conversation that belongs to us, and yet everyone is having it. People feel as though it is their place to weigh in on the mental state of a human being because that human being plays for a sports team. Now, what doesn't help is the media coverage and subsequent reaction from the Sixers organization. While I could go out there and look for just the most egregious examples of news coverage just outright attacking Ben, honestly, what is more damaging as a whole is outlets that are willing to entertain this conversation to begin with, rather than the strong stance on the wrong side, which is just far less common because those examples are more obviously bad and not the status quo that the average person is experiencing. I think enough people can see someone say that he's lying in an extremely disrespectful way and turn their nose at it, and those who wouldn't would probably already be on the side of the extreme to begin with. But it is the casual conversation of I don't know maybe where things become more dangerous. Take this video from Fox Sports Radio where Ben Mahler says this.
The Sixers believe that Ben Simmons is faking all of the above because he does not want to face the Philadelphia fan. What do you make of Ben Simmons' latest antics? What do you think about it? Because you have a force field protecting you if you go down that road. Even if it's not true, because how would we know if it's not true? You can't prove it's not true. You can't even ask the question if it's not. Obviously, mental illness is a big problem. I've got relatives, friends that have suffered from it. I think it's a big deal. But when you use that and weaponize that to get out of wearing a Sixers uniform, that's bullcrap.
In this clip, Ben is not strongly leaning into one side of the argument or another. He's talking about how faking mental health issues is bad, but also mental health struggles should be taken seriously. Basically, he's fence-sitting, but because he entertains this conversation and opens it to dialogue, you can look at the comments section and see a whole lot of garbage that varies from confusing to downright sickening. Truly perplexing how someone could get comments like these by the millions and they would have mental health struggles. I don't know how that could be. But it is the media platforming this discussion of a stranger's mental health that makes this discourse so widespread. And it makes the general public feel as though they have license to speculate on something that is none of their fucking business. Now, as I hinted at earlier, the problem with Ben Simmons' situation kind of speaks to how employees are treated in America. People are treated like commodities, and thus their humanity and mental health struggles will get swept under the rug. Of course, under the veil of professionalism, which is the exact shit that you see people in the media say all the time. Quote, be a professional, which is a concept I generally take issue with and especially do in sports. The idea of professionalism is often used to deny someone's humanity. After the Phoenix Mercury lose Game 7 of the WNBA Finals and they don't talk to the media, that's considered unprofessional because they're having their human moment. After Cam Newton just had the worst loss of his career, when he responds like any human would, he's criticized for being unprofessional. That's just another way of saying, fuck your feelings, go to work. And that actually reminds me of another criticism thrown at athletes who take breaks for mental health, one that is bothersome to me in particular. Well, if I say I have mental health issues, I still have to go to work. Yeah, that's probably true. Most of us do not have the luxury of prioritizing our mental well-being over being employed. But guess whose fault that is? It's not fucking Ben's. The problem is what I mentioned earlier, when people become commodities and are treated as explicitly only worth the labor that they can provide. Christ, this is exactly like when poor people blame immigrants for their struggles when it's literally the rich that are causing your problems. That's exactly who they want you to blame. You aren't putting any pressure on the actual problem at hand. You are just creating unnecessary division and distracting from the real issue, but I digress. You are right to take issue with the fact that you cannot always get a break when you need it, but don't direct that complaint at Ben Simmons or any other athlete going through struggles. Don't say, oh, he has that, he shouldn't have that because I don't. You should say, oh, he has that, I should also have that. On another note, another thing to consider is how a player's reputation can play into the reaction to an announcement like this. Ben, being one of the most disliked players in sports, might play some part in the overall reaction to his announcement. To contrast this with a recent example, Simone Biles decided to stop participating in the Olympics because she, like Ben, was struggling with her mental state. And sure, there was some backlash. For example, conservative commentator and micro-penis who became a real boy Charlie Kirk had plenty of bullshit to say.
Simone Biles says, "This Olympic Games, I wanted to be for myself when I came in, and I felt like I was still doing it for other people," as she cried after the team event on Tuesday. So that just, it like hurts my heart because doing what I love has been kind of taken away from me to please other people. Yeah, that's the point, Simone Biles. You're representing your nation, you're selfish sociopath. You kidding me? Today it's like, you know what? I'm not going to do something stupid and get hurt. It's just not worth it. Especially when you have like 3 amazing athletes that can step up to the plate and do it. So you know who has the gold medal? Russia. Russia. I have to go look at these 4'11" Russian Olympians chewing on their gold medals, smirking at the Americans. I'm not okay with that. But honestly, that's where we're headed. We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles.
Fuck that guy. But in general, I'd say there was a positive reception to this news, especially by comparison to the reception that Ben got. So what's the difference? Well, Simone is just significantly more well-liked. Most people either like Simone or are neutral on her. Meanwhile, Ben Simmons, before the second round versus the Hawks, was already one of the most overhated players in the league. That only got amplified after the fact to the point where the only people on Ben's side, Sixers fans, turned against him as well. All the jokes about Ben Simmons' jump shot or him passing up a dunk in Game 7 did not need a whole lot to turn into insults about his mental health or the accusations of him lying about it. It's not a direct through line, but I think there's a connection there. Also, there's the fact that he's a man and there's a stigma against men publicly having mental health issues, even more so in sports where toughness is something that is emphasized all the time. This roughly translates into men being called soft for things like this. Of course, we all know showing humanity to be soft. You guys remember all that Kwame Brown drama from a bit ago? Yeah, that dude went through some shit, and yet here he is on this tool Jesse Dorsey's garbage Bleacher Report article, calling him one of the softest players in league history because he didn't appreciate a 40-year-old Michael Jordan calling him slurs constantly when he was 19. I'm sure people are going to see this video and call me soft for that, or for the fact that I am open about the fact that I have mental struggles and see a therapist. Hell, I've already gotten those comments on like Twitter before. But expressing mental health issues, or even just having them in private, is not a weakness. Being able to be openly vulnerable to it, in the case of Ben or like DeMar DeRozan, Larry Sanders, and Kevin Love, it's extremely difficult, and sure as shit is not a weakness. I actually have a theory that Ben didn't initially mention the mental mental struggles for fear of this criticism. First, I'll gamble my salary, and then when that doesn't work, well, I don't know, I guess I'll say that my back's hurt, because no one says you're soft for being hurt, right? He'd rather gamble his salary than be honest about his mental health, and I'm pretty damn sure that's because of this stigma. But now let's talk about the biggest problem here: how the Philadelphia 76ers have managed this situation. There are two different shitty things that the Sixers did. Now at the start, things looked good. The initial report had good comments from Doc Rivers and Sixers players that indicated that they were in support of Ben, but then later they would leak the fact that they think he's faking his mental health struggles, claiming mental health is serious and they are, quote, livid that Simmons went down that road. Which again, might I say, the Sixers don't know if he's faking it. That is purely speculation. If they realized this and actually cared about mental health to the extent that they claim to, then comments like this would not even be remotely public, and there would not be any indication like this towards Ben Simmons. This being public achieves nothing outside of putting further pressure on Ben. But then it gets even worse. After this, they go on to fine him for not working with the Sixers mental health professionals as Ben opted for his own. Which, fining him for that is essentially like saying, oh, you have mental health issues? Fix them on our terms or else you have to give us money. This is similar in a way to how the Spurs treated Kawhi Leonard with his physical health when it came to returning from injury. The Spurs team doctors cleared Kawhi, but Kawhi did not feel ready and he wanted to be cleared by his own doctors. The reason for this is team doctors can be susceptible to bias towards the importance of a player being back and prioritizing that over the person that they are treating actually being fully healthy. It is a problem with physical health. There are countless examples of this. And the same shit can happen with mental health. Just because you signed a contract with the sports team does not mean you get to be robbed of your autonomy with your body, both from your mental and physical health. Just like with a regular job, your physical and mental health should be a priority over the work you're doing. Now, what should be and what is are very rarely the same, but you get my point. If you don't think sports teams consistently overlook these things for the sake of just having their players on their terms, look no further than how former NFL players for years were telling the league that CTE was a huge issue and they were just constantly ignored. And that's just the most obvious example. So Ben having hesitance with the Sixers' mandated mental health professionals is completely understandable. All the Sixers are hoping for with that move is for the assigned therapist to clear Ben to play so he has no more excuses, even if it is a bullshit clearance. Now, I imagine some would look at Ben declining this help from the Sixers and say, oh, for the love of God, how many hoops is he going to have to make them jump through? Or like, wow, can we please get on with it? But no, that's not how mental health works, and it's prioritizing the wrong things. Impatience with this situation is a blatant expression of just prioritizing an organization over a person, a sports team over a human being. Let me put it this way, and this pretty much sums up my entire point. Even if there is a 99% chance that Ben Simmons is lying about his mental health issues, the consequences of that 99% pale in comparison to the consequences of mishandling that 1%. The absolute worst case scenario, if Ben Simmons is faking all of his mental health issues, is that a basketball player doesn't play for a team. That's it. The consequences of someone with a declining mental state having that mental state called into question and overwritten, and they are thus forced into a situation that they just are not comfortable with and only furthers that decline. The worst case for that, I'm not gonna say it, but it's a lot fucking worse. I can promise you that. As LeBron James once famously said, at the end of the day, it is just basketball. Even though I have covered this sport as my job for my entire adult life, and really the NBA in general just lives rent-free in my head and has for most of my life now, it's not hard for me to acknowledge that ultimately this is not life or death, but the struggles that a human being can have, especially in the public eye, they can be life or death. And that goes for all players with all teams in all sports. NBA fans, NBA media, and NBA teams need a reality check on what actually matters the most. At the end of the day, if Ben Simmons is lying, sure, there is basketball and money at stake. But if he's not, it pales in comparison to the human life at stake. Okay, I hate to do the, hey, I did it thing at the end of a deep dive again, but hey, I did it. I feel like after the Popovich deep dive, I just set the bar too high in terms of my own standard of content, where I was like, I need to either top this or meet the same level of quality, which for the amount of dedication I want to put into each individual video is kind of an impossible bar to reach on a consistent basis. I was trying to one-up that video with like anything I wrote, and like that was just never going to happen. Now that said, I am eventually planning on one-upping that video. I have two big topics, one of which will hopefully come out by the end of the year, and hopefully there will be a deep dive every week for the entirety of December as I try and reach 200k subscribers. Speaking of which, if you've made it this far and you are still watching, please subscribe if you have not already, and subscribed or not, please drop a like on this video. These deep dives almost universally get 10,000 plus likes, so if you could drop a like for me, that'd be appreciated. But yeah, that was the video. Shout out to me for editing, because I edit these videos. I write script. Writing and scripting is the same thing. I edit these videos myself. Stop giving Rudy the credit for editing these videos. I edit these videos. Anyways, thanks for watching, and goodbye.